into different formats for average guy audiences, or for technical audiences, or for potential investors. So that's really our specialty, is to take a really complicated idea and make it understandable to different kinds of audiences. So this is selling your invention, why professional video production matters. So the first question someone might ask is, why should I spend a bunch of money on a video presentation? And the easy answer to that is, have you ever gone, you're on the web, you're searching for something, you go to a website, and you land on the home page, and you know immediately you aren't going to buy anything from this website, you aren't going to even click on another button, because it's so unprofessional and so poorly done that the credibility of the company and the product is immediately destroyed, because you already know you don't want to do business with these people. That is really the reason why to use professional video production. And there's a great temptation to try to do this stuff yourself, and I'll show you some examples and some of the technological problems that you face with doing this that will show you why you really shouldn't do this. Another reason is what I call the Mercedes analogy, and that is everybody can tell the difference between a cheap car and a nice car, or a cheap piece of furniture and a nice piece of furniture. Even if you can't articulate what it is, what exact details are that make one seem higher quality than the other, you know it. And it's subtle things, like, what does the door sound like when you close it? Does it sound tinny? Does it sound like it really locks up? So everybody instinctively knows what quality looks like, even if they don't know how to make it, or they don't know how to describe how to do it. And so that's the other reason. So I really oriented this toward inventors, and not so much as some of the other folks. But the idea is you're finished with your invention, you're ready to go to market, and now what? So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to start getting in front of investors, banks, potential licensees, purchasing agents, perhaps, manufacturers' representatives, people who are going to bring your product to market. And what does an amateur or poor presentation say about you and your product? A bad presentation says, I invented this thing, and now I'm out of money. So screw me. So that's the worst thing. I'm too cheap to tell my story professionally. A common mistake is to think that your invention is so brilliant that it will sell itself, and that you don't need to market it. And should back up a little bit. I'm also an inventor, and back when I was working on something, I attended this group for a while. I'm currently on a patent application right now, so I know what it's like to be. I know what it's like to be on your end of the process. And you do use up a lot of resources to get the thing done, and then now you've got to go to market, and suddenly you find out you're not finished. You're actually just starting, and so you drained the bank, you drained your energy, and so you say, well, I'll just make up some stuff and I'll show it myself. So it also says to your audience that you don't understand what part of the process you've just entered. You don't understand that you're now in the marketing business and you're not in the making things business. And that is another signal that you don't want to convey to somebody. Hi, I'm here with my invention. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a fish out of water in the marketing business, and you could very easily be taken advantage of. And another one is, when you do it yourself, you have shown that you don't have good enough judgment to know the limitations of your own skill set. So, I did my own video, I did it handheld, that sort of thing. So, what does a professional presentation say about you? It says, I believe in my invention, and I'm going to continue to invest in it because I believe in it and I know it'll work. I understand that marketing my invention is the next step that I'm taking, so I know where I am in the long-range process. says, I understand the vernacular of the marketing world, so that's a signal that says, you know, you're not a babe in the woods. And it also says that you're willing to do what it takes to bring your creation to market. So your presentation needs to do the following. It needs to demonstrate the technical aspects of your invention. It needs to show the manufacturing quality of your invention in its best light. It needs to explain the reasons why your invention is an improvement. It needs to explain the features and benefits to the prospective user. Now that would be probably the consumer in this case. It needs to create a professional impression, get someone excited about investing or purchasing or licensing, and all of these things add to your negotiating leverage when you're dealing with these people in the next part of the process. So now we'll have run some demonstrations. So this is, how do you demonstrate your features and benefits? What is it? How does it work? What does it do for the user, and why is it better? So the first example is going to be, let's see if I think the projector went dead, so let's wake this guy up. Hello?
There's no source.
Well, I think my computer went to sleep.
Oh, okay, yeah, it started.
There we go. Okay, this is a little clip that shows a fairly complex technical device, which is an automotive belt tensioner, and it shows. Let's see if it'll run here. Okay, this has no sound.
So that part's working.
All right, let's see what happens here. I think my mirroring went off, so stand by. That was pretty underwhelming, that one.
It seems to be checking HDMI and another thing. I don't know if it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah, before it just
There's
came
the-
off.
oh,
Here we
yeah.
are. All right. So let's get this back on. So here's our tensioner.
Just with your thumb.
So this has all the parts coming in, and then they align themselves in the way that they're going to be assembled, and then we assemble the thing. Now what that does is it, instead of saying here's the whole, and then you try to explain what everything is, it starts with all the parts and it assembles it right in front of your face, and it makes it a lot easier to quickly understand what you're looking at. I can
So
run
you guys do all the 3D modeling and everything?
we do some of it in-house, and then some of it we contract out, depending on how complicated. This is a freelancer that did this piece, but under my direction. So let's see what the next. What do we got? Okay, Delaware. Now this is the thing we did for Gates. Let's see if we can get some sound out of this.
Over 240 million vehicles on the road today, and 1 out of 5 needs a new serpentine belt. Today's engines are very sophisticated, so it's important to know if critical parts need to be replaced. If undetected, a worn serpentine belt can adversely affect vehicle performance and possibly even damage other engine components. These risks can easily be avoided by checking the belt for wear. Since the late 1990s, auto manufacturers have phased out the use of belts made of neoprene and have installed longer-lasting and better-performing EPDM belts on new models. EPDM is a far more resilient material and doesn't exhibit the same signs of wear as neoprene. This short presentation will help you accurately diagnose EPDM belt wear and show you how to evaluate these belts for replacement. There are significant differences in the way these two types of belts show signs of wear. Neoprene belts tend to crack and lose chunks of rib material, and it is usually quite evident that they're at the end of their service life. When EPDM belts age, however, the evidence of wear is much less obvious, unless some other components of the accessory drive system have failed or are misaligned.
This is CG.
As an EPDM belt wears out, it loses rubber material, much in the same way as a tire, and mostly on the sides of the belt ribs. As the belt ages, the rib valleys gradually become wider while the rib height remains the same. When the ribs have lost between 5 and 10% of their original material, traction between the pulley and the belt is significantly reduced. If enough material loss occurs, the pulleys will bottom out in the belt valleys, resulting in slip, noise, or hydroplaning. A serpentine belt that is worn past its service life can negatively affect the performance of other accessory drive components. In some cases, a worn belt can damage or destroy other parts, such as alternator or compressor bearings, the belt tensioner, or the water pump.
Now what we're going to do here, we're going to go into a whole bunch of detail about, but I'll show you some things that, let's go to,
What, do you use multiple video editors or one software?
Final Cut and After Effects. So what?
That's Adobe?
Adobe After Effects. Now I'm rewinding back here because I'm going to show these two kinds of belts, and I'm making a comparison between thing A and thing B. Now, one of the ways to reduce cognitive clutter, which is part of what a pro does, is if you're presenting two things and you want to contrast the difference between the two, reduce the number of other variables that are different between the two examples. So show them exactly the same way. And the way I did this was to actually mount the belts on a piece of metal and shoot them exactly the same way. And they were the two belts were locked down into a rig so that the cameraman was precisely the same way. The only difference is
the way these two types of belts show signs of wear. Neoprene belts tend to crack and lose chunks of rib material, and it is usually quite evident that they're at the end of their service life. When EPDM belts age, however, the evidence of wear is much less obvious, unless some other components of the accessory drive system have failed or are misaligned.
So then, the only thing that's being contrast. Now here I'm going to show, stop this real quick. So here, this is where we want to go into a diagram, when we want to show a cross-section of the belt and what's happening in the belt. So what's a fast visual way to get the viewer to know where he is in this picture? And this is how we use this.
Yeah.
We use the model, and I'll run that.
As an
so we go in
EPDM belt
here,
wears
where
out,
you are.
It loses rubber
Superimpose
material, much
the
in the same
graphic
way as a
over it. Now we
tire,
know where we are.
and mostly on the sides of the belt ribs.
And then we explain the whole thing about wearing it.
As the belt ages, the rib valleys gradually become wider while the rib height remains the same. When the ribs have lost between 5 and 10% of their original material, traction between the pulley and the belt is significantly reduced. If enough material loss occurs,
Shot
the
in
pulleys will bottom out in the belt
studio
valleys, resulting in
or
slip,
on-
noise, or
shot
hydroplaning.
in the
A
studio.
serpentine belt that is worn past its service life can negatively
here's
affect the
the-
performance of other accessory drive components. In some cases, a
And here we
worn
go
belt
back.
can
We use the
damage or
same model
destroy
all the
other
time,
parts,
and the
such
same
as
starting
alternator
position
or
all
compressor
the time,
bearings,
so
the
that
belt tensioner,
we're-
or the water pump.
You're saying, okay, I know where I am again. Now you're
Certain
telling me another-
ABDS performance symptoms may also indicate that the serpentine
Here,
belt needs to be
right here,
replaced.
I set up
Be sure to note
four
whether
things we're
any
gonna
of these
explain
symptoms
next.
are present when you evaluate
And
the
I will keep
serpentine
them
belt.
in the shot. And then
Belt
highlight
slip
the
can
one that we're
reduce the
talking about
performance
right
of other
now.
accessory
So
drive
that's a
components
device that lets you
and
know
can
where
cause
you are in the
excessive heat,
presentation.
which can damage bearings and other equipment. If water cannot be channeled away between a pulley and a worn belt, hydroplaning will reduce the transmission of power within the system. Material loss can also change the effective length of the belt, moving the tensioner beyond its take-up range. When this occurs, accessory performance is reduced. If uneven rib wear is detected,
Now we're back to
this
the
may
same
indicate pulley misalignment or
graphics
failure of
you
the
know what
internal
we're talking
components of the
about.
tensioner. The resulting noise, vibration, and increased heat can cause other components to fail.
Now this is the wrap up.
To make diagnosis easier, Gates has developed a simple belt wear gauge that will help you determine if a belt is past its service life. The gauge is easy to use and it's free from your Gates representative or from GatesBeltwear.com.
So we've described what the problem
This simple
is.
gauge will help you
Now we're
determine
gonna
the
describe
degree
what
of
our
wear on
solution
any multi-ribbed belt, whether on or off the engine.
is. We call this
Here's
the
how it
belt
works.
gauge.
If the belt is off the engine, place it on a flat surface, ribs up. Insert the gauge pin into one of the rib valleys. If the belt is good, the gauge pin will sit higher than the ribs. You can confirm this visually or with a fingertip. If the belt is still installed on the engine, locate a straight section of the belt. Insert one finger into the hole in the gauge and reach under the belt to insert the pin into one of the valleys. Use another finger to check the height of the gauge in the belt. Check all of the valleys on the belt. If the readings are inconsistent, this indicates pulley misalignment or other problems in the accessory drive system. The results from the belt wear gauge indicate an approximation of the material loss from the belt, which should be taken into consideration with other factors such as mileage, operating environment, and the condition of other components. The free belt wear gauge from Gates is an easy way to make sure that engine performance is not reduced by a worn serpentine belt. Contact your Gates representative or visit gatesbeltwear.com and order yours today. For over 100 years, Gates innovations have helped people around the world get better performance and increased longevity from their motor vehicles. You can count on Gates to continue this tradition and bring you exciting new products and technological improvements well into the future.
How many different places do you need to check the belt? I mean, I know you're not, the expert, but I mean, can you just check one place and the wear is pretty consistent?
On these particular belts, they wear out very consistently.
Okay. I think that's enough.
But I'm glad you asked the question, and at least you learned enough from this
Right.
to ask that question.
It was
I mean,
very good education. I was absorbing all of it.
So I cheated you out of some of it, but just because it's so long.
So they did this presentation pretty much just to introduce that belt gauge, or
Right.
reiterate the fact that they make belts too?
Well, the problem is that they made these neoprene belts that lasted about 60,000 miles, and then they started to chunk out and fall apart. So the engineering department came up with these new elastomer belts, these EPDMs, and they can go 120,000 miles. But the mechanics didn't know how to evaluate whether they were worn out. Now, of course, if you have a 60,000 mile belt and you introduce a 120,000 mile belt, there's going to be a period of time when no belts wear out,
Right.
and you basically ruined your own business model.
No replacement parts.
So this was a way to get the technicians to know when the thing was worn out so that they could recommend them, because using the old way of determining them by looking for physical damage, the technicians were putting belts back on cars that really should have been replaced. So we had to re-educate them. So this was part of a program that was aimed at car mechanics or technicians. We don't call them mechanics anymore. And this was a YouTube video that went up, but there were a lot of other parts to this process of convincing them. So the next one, the next example is, it's about 7 minutes long, and I'll just run through it. This is a uninterruptible power supply unit that is the kind of thing that you would put in a computer room.
I mean,
That's all right.
but you raised the question, is there are other parts to convince them?
Oh, there were print material and a website and all kinds of other marketing tools
Oh, I see.
that we used at the same time to get that message out.
This was just a video for you.
That was just the video portion of it. You know,
They still got these little gauges?
we made millions of those things.
Good. I can get one of these.
Yeah, if I'd known, I would have brought some. But it gets better, because once we got that out, then we came up with the idea of an app for a smartphone, and I'm on that patent. So
Oh, and it checks where? The smartphone
you take a
checks where?
picture of it. I'll show you the video on that. So
Send it for analysis.
yeah, it's an image analysis kind of thing. So the next one is this Tronic this uninterruptible power supply system that comes out of your zero. And I won't tell you anything more about it because I want to see whether my video is good enough so that you can educate yourselves on it. And so I will just run this file.
Another look at modularity with the Tronic Power Plus Uninterruptible Power Supply. The Power Plus delivers clean, green, high-efficiency power in a single footprint form factor. Lightweight, user-friendly 10 kVA modules provide simple and reliable expansion to meet your growing power needs. With the Power Plus, you can have expandable, redundant power at costs comparable to conventional UPS and lower than other modular solutions. And the benefits go far beyond clean power. Super high efficiency means less heat and lower cooling costs in your data center. And pay-as-you-grow scalability lowers your initial investment while minimizing capital costs as your system grows. Welcome to the next generation of UPS reliability, savings, and ease of use. The Power Plus can deliver this high performance and value because of its unique design and innovative UL-approved power architecture. The key design components that make this possible are double conversion power, true online battery, hot plug, hot swap power modules, scalability, N+1 redundancy, and our hybrid static switch. Let's take a closer look at the features and benefits of the Power Plus. Double conversion downstream power is clean, green, and completely unaffected by voltage and frequency variations coming from the power mains. The Power Plus converts AC input to DC, stabilizes the DC current, then converts it back to AC for completely clean, dependable power to the load. You get smooth, constant, consistent AC output to the data center power bus, no matter what happens on the input side. Your data center equipment lasts longer and operates more efficiently for higher dependability and savings. The online battery design increases reliability because there are significantly fewer components in the topology. Traditional UPS designs require a separate charger, an SCR or blocking diode, and often a DC to DC conversion step. Key components are then vulnerable to failure during a transfer to battery power. The Power Plus architecture eliminates these extra components, so both the rectifier and battery have a permanent galvanic connection to the inverter through the DC link. If the mains fail, the inverter continues operating as though nothing has happened. The result is lighter weight, higher efficiency, reduced complexity, and exceptional reliability. The Power Plus hot plug and hot swap architecture, combined with its lightweight module design, means faster deployment if you should need to swap out a module. Each module weighs less than 20 pounds, so anyone can replace it in seconds without tools, training, or special knowledge. Microprocessor-based controllers in each module match phase and amplitude precisely before bringing the module online. Smooth, clean load redistribution occurs without noise or fluctuation. The controller module can be hot swapped as well, allowing the user to place it in any convenient location in the chassis. For extra reliability, full control logic is included in each module, allowing the system to run indefinitely, even without the system controller. The Tronic Power Plus system is scalable, and that means your system can grow with your needs. Whatever your power needs are today, it's likely they will increase in the future, and you want to be prepared to meet that increase in demand. With traditional systems, you pay for future capacity today, oversizing your system and tying up valuable capital in the meantime. The pay-as-you-grow design lets you add power modules at any time, minimizing the cost of capital. Your system grows up, not out, so you only pay for increased capacity when you are ready to use it. The Power Plus delivers incremental redundancy at lower cost than conventional systems. In a typical system, redundancy is achieved by deploying 2 or more larger UPS units with the capacity to carry the total load. This results in significant unused capacity and lowered efficiency of all the units in the system. With the Power Plus, modular redundancy can take place in 10 kVA increments, so all units function at higher capacity. This results in higher efficiency, 94%, for the entire system. The result is lower heat and reduced cooling costs, and that can add up to significant savings in data center overhead. When you take other systems offline, your power supply is at risk when the static switch is deployed. Mechanical switches suffer from long transfer times, but offer high overload resistance and effective isolation of the inverter. Electronic static switches provide fast transfer times, but lower reliability. The Power Plus hybrid static switch combines the benefits of both technologies, delivering minimal transfer time, secure inverter isolation, and high reliability. The Power Plus is made in Israel by Tronic, a leading innovator in power electronics since 1970. Tronic products are distributed worldwide and are UL approved, ISO 9001 compliant, and can be made compliant with all military and medical standards. So take another look at modular UPS, the Tronic Power Plus, the next generation in stable, reliable, affordable power. The Power Plus by Tronic.
Okay, so let's deconstruct this guy.
Green.
Where do I get one?
I don't know.
So, the things that I teed up earlier, okay, this is showing the product in the best light. This is a nicely manufactured product.
Is that the actual product
This is
there?
the actual product.
That is the actual.
That's not a CGI.
This is not a CGI.
Wow.
This is with the motion effects camera.
This is with the motion control camera. This is these first several shots.
Take another look at modularity with the Tronic Power Plus Uninterruptible power supply. The Power Plus delivers clean, green, high-efficiency power in a single footprint form factor. Lightweight, user-friendly 10 kVA modules provide simple and reliable.
Is CGI. So this was another thing we did. Again, it's reducing variables and making it so that the only things that are different are the things that we want to point out. So we got their CAD files and we built a 3D model and put it in a virtual environment and lit it exactly the same way we did in the studio. Literally measuring how far lights were, what the beam spread on the lights were, and we set up the CGI so it matched. So this was a way that we would, so that the viewers, you're not thinking about that part. You're listening to the voiceover, you're watching the information, and you're learning about the product.
Expansion to meet your growing power needs. With the Power Plus, you can have expandable, redundant power at costs comparable to conventional UPS and lower than other modular solutions. And the benefits go far beyond clean power.
So we actually go inside it. Later in the piece.
For high
we'll fly
efficiency
back
means
out of
less
the
heat
version.
and lower cooling costs in your data center. And pay-as-you-grow scalability lowers your initial investment while minimizing capital costs.
And here we, just for fun, that's just showing off there. We peeled the logo off of the actual unit and then stuck it down in the bottom corner and left it there for the rest of the presentation so that our branding is always on there. So here we are at the CG world again. So we're back, we're looking at the whole thing, and we're going to tell them what we're going to tell them, is what we're doing here. So then we set up all these 7 different items, or 6 or whatever it was, and you saw how that worked. So.
And then your background music is just like some generic stuff. You don't have to do much for.
Yeah. So then you saw this, and then at the end, so this explains how it works technically, and we explain the technical aspects of it. We explain why it's a better product compared to the competition. We tell them how they're going to save money, they can save capital, and what the benefits are, you know, technically.
Is
And
there
then
a timeline to this?
I'm sorry.
Is there a timeline to it? Like how, I suppose, I'm just curious. That you, this has to be presented between a certain time or someone loses interest?
They have to get to the data center facility manager when they're ready to buy something. One of the problems with this product is it's new. The data center managers are typically comfortable with what they do, and so they don't want to try something new. So we had to make some pretty strong arguments. And at the end, we can't go through that whole thing again. And then this is just a bunch of pretty stuff here, mixed together, both the CG elements and the actuals.
Did the company do mostly the verbal write-up then, or the oral write-up?
We did the printed materials for them too.
Okay.
Since it was mostly about video, I didn't bring any of this stuff.
How did you decide on the particular voice to use?
That was somebody that the owner knew.
Oh,
And
okay.
she was kind of hot, and he wanted to spend
Current girlfriend.
wanted to spend some time in the studio looking at her, I think is what that was all about. Although she did
But
a good
you know,
voice,
you
though.
notice
Yeah,
that
she
they
did do a nice
usually
job.
use
Yeah.
female voices for a lot of stuff.
Now, the previous one was a disc jockey in town who used to
Really?
be on one of the country stations. All right, so what's next on the list here?
Your filming equipment, is that able to be taken onto site for like larger pieces, or is
Yeah,
that-
it has its own trailer, and it can go goes on trips. Mostly, I keep it in mostly do. Sorry, I can't do that and talk at the same time. Usually, I do studio work with it, but sometimes we do location stuff. So then there's the subject of showing your product in the best light. So let's do that. And this is just a reel of, it's a mixture of video, computer graphics, and photography that's kind of sliding around Ken Burns style. And unfortunately, you'll recognize the music because this particular cut, I really like it, and it really cuts well to everything. So you're going to hear the same music 3 times here. Sorry about that. the point in this is not, show off or anything, but it's, the idea is that some of this is pretty mundane stuff, like truck water pumps and pneumatic hoses and things like that. And the point here is that if you do it properly with somebody who knows what they're doing, you can really make your product look sensational. But you have to, somebody has to know what they're doing. I'll just pop something up here real quick. Now, this is a 7-pass motion control move of a bunch of Don's faucets. But even if you were just going to take a still picture like that of something that's shiny, and if any of you are inventing something that's highly polished, you have to control all of the reflections in the entire room. In order to do this shot, I have a 20-foot by 12-foot scrim that I hang over the top of the set so that you can get these nice flat reflections right here. This is a mirror basically, and if I'm shooting down on it, it's going to look up into the ceiling of my studio and see a bunch of rafters.
Right,
And
or see your camera or whatever.
yeah, or the camera will show up over here, and then this is 180 degrees of mirror, so that means that I have to know what's everything in the room that surrounds this. It has to be under control. Otherwise, it's just filled with visual noise. Now, when you, a human being, look at this faucet in any environment, your brain subtracts that noise and it says, oh, that's shiny and it's really highly polished and it's beautiful. But if I take a picture of it in exactly the same environment,
They'll see the
it
rafters and the
defeats
lights.
your
and
cognitive process
spider
of
webs.
subtraction of all that noise. And so you look at this photograph and you say, well, that's a crappy looking faucet. So a lot of people try to do their own photography, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But on something like this, or something that's very complex and technical, you aren't going to be able to do it in your basement. And so
Yeah, I remember from my engineering days, we would take a picture of like a shiny metal shaft, and we get a professional photographer, and it was a lot of work. I mean, to get the lighting right, and because it's very hard to take a picture of something reflective.
and then if you want to move around it,
Yeah.
then now you've got to control 270, 300 degrees of environment. And not only that, you need a big room, and you need giant flat surfaces that can reflect the light.
When do you make the call to, so I don't know if your client, had CAD models or, could create renderings. I know obviously that's a great way to control it, without having to put the physical measures in place. But when do you make the call to, go ahead and shoot something physical versus work with a rendering, or is it that black and white?
If I'm trying to show the quality of the object, of the product, I use photography.
Okay.
If I'm trying to show technical aspects of it, or I want to go inside it, or talk about what it does, then I can use CG, or I can use all kinds of different methods of illustration. But in a product where the quality of the workmanship counts, you can't fake it with CG. Everybody can see it. And there's an example I'll show you coming up, that a demonstration project that we did for Oakley sunglasses, which is exactly that problem. They want to show the sunglasses moving around, but they don't like CG because it's obviously fake. So so they asked us to prove that we could do something, and then we did.
So
I think
Do you make also presentation for software, business procedures, methods, something that is not physical?
Anything that's complicated technically
Okay.
is pretty much what we do.
Okay.
I'm
So you're not limited
I'm like
to
a science addict, and so I'm primarily the person who translates both the words and the technical imagery. But it's because I get this stuff, I can figure it out. and
So
make
you're
it
not
pretty
limited
fun.
to objects, to
No,
Right, okay.
processes are just as difficult, and
okay.
actually harder to illustrate sometimes, because
Sure, yeah.
particularly software processes.
Yeah, so I mean, just the product, just the examples you've shown. I mean, I admit coming tonight, I don't know, I didn't expect you
Is
to
that-
be illustrating such complicated.
Is that CG or real? Just
This is real.
That's
This
real.
is
Okay.
now the thing
From
here
lighting
is
is awesome.
I'm using The computer is controlling the camera crane, which is sweeping around the object, and this is the front end of a Ford VTEC engine. And I have a stepper motor attached to the crankshaft, and I'm actually driving the system. But basically what I do, I start at the end of the move, I get all the belt logos lined up, and then I back the move up, and I run it so when it stops, it lands right on the logo. And I get exactly what I want there. That's
Is that a hookah pipe?
So these are some kind of lab equipment. Now, they're not particularly remarkable by themselves. Yeah, they do kind of look like that. But I have, and again, it's just explaining why it's complicated. And I have a rigging system that's like a metal Tinker Toy set that I can make a device that will hold 30 of these things up in a grid like this, and I can adjust them so they're all the same angle. If you tried to do this on a tabletop, they'd keep falling over and maybe it would drive you nuts. This is MoCo again. Now here's these are just air hoses. They don't look that good in real life. Here's another trick. They say we want to do, we want to show these air hoses in here. I could get one, but I told them I need a dozen of them, and I'm going to cut them up into pieces and ruin them all. So they send them over, and then I can make an array, and I can. Now it makes it more interesting. It's exactly the same object, but there's enough of them that you get different views at the same time.
And that's why you have them kind of like slightly counter
Right.
to each other. Okay.
And wrangling them into position is hard too. You got to put wires inside. So this is a difficult thing to do with video, is to do a rack focus in a very short space like that. And here I even have a light. So we won't beat this to death, but here was one. This is just one part of a. We have 7 different products. And we use the two bouncing around from one thing to another to show all the different products. We want to show them all on the engine where they belong, and we want to show them in one continuous move instead of a bunch of cuts. And so we can move around the engine, we orient you, we come into the front in the beginning of the shot where the radiator is, and then we bounce around the engine, and you know exactly where you are all the time because we set up your starting point. The lawnmower engine.
See, I like what you're doing because, okay, for instance, myself being a designer, sometimes a simple part with the right appearance, the right lighting can, I don't know, it captivates me. That's one thing that, whatever, it's just in the eye of the beholder, right? But I think that's really cool how you're nuancing, you're bringing light to simple parts of, even like the hoses, you alluded to, but I'm kind of fascinated by this.
Oh, thank you. Now this little piece over on the left this doesn't show the beginning of the move, but we took a flat schematic of this. It's a hub pulley that goes on the crankshaft. Extruded it out into 3D, into 3 dimensions in wireframe, and then ran it through an invisible plane. And so that is the real thing, and this is the wireframe.
Cool.
So in this case, part of what we can do with the motion control, not to get off subject, is we can send the telemetry from the motion control rig into the 3D software or vice versa, and just make them match up exactly.
Yes, to get 1 minute of final video production, would you say average, how many hours spent to get 1 minute? Hard question to answer, sure.
Well,
It varies.
yeah, it depends. I mean, I'm showing you motion control stuff, which is kind of
The
cheap
higher
because
end.
I'm the only guy in town who can do this. But and that's more expensive. But you could get good professional presentation, industrial, explanatory quality for probably 2,000 a minute finished minute, 2 to 3,000 a finished minute, say for a 5 to 6 minute video. But you can't scale that down to the first minute. And there's a big bump in the front, and then
Right, right.
and and everything depends on how complicated the schematics are. Do you already have them? Do we have to build them from scratch?
What about on a finished product? Manufactured?
Well, this Tronic thing, that was probably $20,000 for that one.
Mhm.
But that's a lot of stuff in there.
Right, it was also a fairly long video too.
Right, that's about almost 7 minutes, and it's got
Yeah.
motion control and some pretty complicated CG. Again, it depends on what your invention is or what
Sure.
the product is you want to sell.
Mhm.
And again, it's like if you have a better version of something that people are familiar with, you don't have to spend a whole lot of time explaining what it is because they already know that. If it's a better egg beater, then you only need to talk about why it's better and convince someone that they should sell it or they should buy it or rep it or whatever. Again, the point of this presentation is that to show you what you can lose by not doing a professional presentation. You can lose all of the investment that you put into making your invention in the first place.
There's no way you could do that with your video camera.
You mean you can't do this stuff with those iPhone, with the
Yeah,
iPhone?
iPhone.
Oh, believe me, these
Maybe the
people have
new one.
discouraged my
Yeah.
existence. Okay, what's next?
Oakley.
Oakley.
Yeah, it's the
Oakley is next.
sunglasses.
Okay, so I have to give you a backstory on this. There's a photographer that works for the Oakley ad agency, and he uses a technique called light painting. And so he'll set up the sunglasses and set them up in a rig, and he will take this fiber optic wand and he'll open the shutter for maybe 20 seconds, and he'll move this wand around and he'll paint the light all over the sunglasses so that
Oh,
the light's
high
coming
exposure.
from anywhere and everywhere. And then he might make a half a dozen up to 20 different exposures and layer them all up in Photoshop and make this thing that is unphotographable. And it's really gorgeous. They're just stunning. So then the Oakley guy said, well, we don't like CG because it looks fake. So can you do this and make video? So of course he can't figure out how to do it. So he talks to one of his buddies, who's one of my buddies, and he says, well, how am I going to do this? Because I have to replicate this light painting hundreds of times, 30 times a second. It has to be exactly the same. Or else it's going to jitter. The light's going to fluctuate. It won't look like it. So that's where I got involved in, myself and a programmer. I got involved in this, and we basically invented the technology to do this. It's never been done as far as we can tell. And so this is our presentation piece to the agency, and it shows what we did and then kind of how we did it. And so this is a good example of not only making the product look sexy, but also explaining the process that was used to do something. And this doesn't have the same soundtrack. Now, apparently we impressed a few people, but they haven't actually hired us to do anything yet. But we basically figured out how to do something that was very complex. We had one computer running the turntable, the dolly, and the focus. And it communicated through an Arduino to a second computer which ran the Windows-based software that controlled the 7-axis arm. And then a third computer was the ingest for all of the frames that came in, and they were all 4K frames. And so the one computer would say, okay, I'm ready to go, now run the move, take the picture, open the shutter. And the last one, this is the new version of the thing that you use to measure belt wear. And this is an example of, this is 1 minute long, it tells the story without any voiceover, and it's just a graphic representation of what this thing does. So, basically get the idea how this thing works.
Right, pretty easy.
So that's what they commissioned us to do. So that's a YouTube video. So that's all the samples I got.
Now, was that, the one you just showed, was that with the iPhone, was that an actual app? Take a picture with the phone and it?
Right.
That's the idea.
Yeah. And the first version of it, you take the picture and then you have to pinch and zoom to get the part of the belt
like
into a
frame.
window. You have to
Yeah.
frame it correctly.
Oh, so there's some sort of a guide that you?
Yeah, there's a
gotcha.
box that comes up on the
Gotcha.
on the screen on the overlay, but you have to manipulate that. And we found a lot of people in the field weren't real good with the pinch and zoom and the rotation.
And grease on your hands.
And so yeah, so version 2 it does all of that stuff automatically.
So it's just a matter of being able to get,
You can take the picture off axis at,
Oh, really?
at a weird angle. And,
Right. What are you gonna do when everybody converts back to chains?
Well, that's already happening in the timing
Yeah.
belt category.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
has
Yeah.
to.
So, so that's, kind of summarize it. You want to make a good impression on everybody that, that you're talking to, whether it's investors or bankers or, whoever it is you expect to pick up your product and do something with it. And, I don't mean to be a spoiler, but you can't do this on your own. If your nephew took a class in video in his senior year in high school, your invention is not the opportunity to give him his big break so that he can put something in his reel. So that's pretty much it. So it's question and answer time.
We'll take a short break and then come
Okay.
back.
Those are amazing videos.
Yeah, it's
Cheers.
very nice work.
Oh, thank you.
Very nice work.